So let's watch this video. This video is called "Do All Men Think the Same?" from Spectrum. You guys love it when I talk about these weird videos, dude. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Let's turn it. Let's hit it.
Love talking to you guys. Enjoy this episode of Spectrum Men.
I like the way the old school ways work. They did work. We just messed it up.
So that's important to you, to be like the breadwinner?
I'm the caretaker of society.
And I don't really agree. Well, to that point, what's so funny? Hold on a second. What's so funny about that? I know I'm pissing you guys off. Hold on a second. What's so funny to that is, like, me personally, like, I don't give a shit. Like, I would be totally fine with, like, someone else being the breadwinner, like a woman, man. I don't give a shit, man. Could you just imagine just vibing playing video games all day and getting paid for that? I couldn't. Get it? Yeah, that's all I do.
I have worried about the size of my penis.
I'll tell you one thing, dude. Of course I've worried about the size of my pee-pee. I feel like every guy thinks about that, dude. Like, you know, it's concerning. Sometimes you feel a little inadequate, you know, when you do have the corn hub. It gives you like an unrealistic standard or basis for like the way that you perceive your pee-pee. So of course you have like insecurities when it comes to that, especially when that's like whether you're consuming, especially when you're like super into that kind of stuff. You kind of have those things. But I will tell you one thing, like as you get older, like women don't necessarily like larger men. Like I've met women and I've been with women who liked really large guys. I wasn't super satisfactory for them. But like most of the women I've experienced, like they don't prefer being in pain. Trying to keep it as PC as possible. You understand what I'm saying? So, just something to keep in mind, guys.
2, 1, go.
Oh my god. This is a good question. I like this.
It's just a normal thing to be worried about. Like when you're growing up, like you're like, am I normal? You know, like.
That's fair. Yeah.
I hate this. I guess like when I was younger, I was like, whoa, is this normal? Is this not? But like, eventually I was like, nah, I'm fine.
I feel like this whole conversation is just like bringing to my awareness how impressionable and like how much of our lives and our masculinity is defined by when we're kids. When everybody's like, oh, you gotta have a big dick, you gotta have a big dick. And all you see is like, only time you see a
hey, big dick energy, guys. It's all over TikTok. You know what I'm saying? Big pee-pee energy.
dick is on porn and it's like 14 inches, then it's like, well, mine doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
Then of course you're gonna like start thinking about it versus
Mine does. No, it doesn't. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, please. What was that question? Oh, they had a reset. Give them a okay. Oh, they had a reset or something.
I'm actually changing my answer.
Oh.
I changed my mind because what he said was, it made a lot of sense, because I remember the first time I saw porno and I saw a black guy's penis, I was like, I'm not like that. As I got older, I perfected my craft. I've never had a problem with women. It has nothing to do with the penis. It's all about, it's not the size of the boat, it's the motion of the ocean. You just love a woman, you embrace each other, and it's just, I've never had a problem with a woman.
Okay, that's
I think
cool.
for younger guys, this is the concern that I'm realizing is like, maybe if these discussions were more open about size and whatever, and that really over time it all becomes okay and it's fine, maybe that would help a lot.
A man should pay for the first date.
All right, a man should pay for the first date. This is a very interesting one because, like, we do have this idea in society that, like, okay, so it's such a crazy one. I don't know. Should they and should they have to? It's different. Me personally, yeah, I think a man should pay for the first date. I don't know. So we have like shifting, gender norms and whatnot. It's totally acceptable for women to, be breadwinners. It's totally acceptable for men to not be breadwinners and to like be the more, you could say, submissive role in a relationship. But like generally speaking, I think that most, yeah, that's a great question. I guess. I don't know. I do feel like it just feels right. Does that make sense? It's so hard because I usually don't go with those types of answers. But like, yeah, I think that it is. I think that like, for at least from my, okay, here's a good, okay. I got an answer. I got an answer that's not just like, hey, this is how I feel. Okay. If you're like somebody who is like, would be considered the dominant individual in the relationship, then you should pay first, even if that's a woman, right? Now, it's hard to establish who's going to be more dominant and submissive in a relationship, but I think that that's fair. I think paying is like a power dynamic, and it's a show of like, hey, look at me. I'm like equitable. I'm credible. I'm a person that you would want to date. Most of the time, it's men, but I think that it can be women. And in those instances, like if you're a girl dating a femboy, pay up, baby. All right, that's what you get for wanting equality. But I don't think that men have to. But then again, I also think that like if a man doesn't pay and then a woman's like, I don't like that, it's completely reasonable for them to be that way. And it's the same thing the other way. If a woman doesn't want to pay and a man doesn't like that, they can walk away from the relationship too. It's just not as like normalized, if that makes sense.
I like the way the old school ways work. They did work. We just messed it up.
So that's important to you to like take that leadership role to be,
Tradition.
to be like the breadwinner.
I'm the caretaker of society. I don't even like saying it this way. Once you give the woman the power, then you just demasculate yourself. I want to stick to what's made me happy, and my grandparents, my parents, I'm just gonna stick with it.
Whoa, great advertisement. I really don't want to listen to it though. Okay, so to that guy's point, it's like on an individual level, totally fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a traditionalist. What I will say, like, is if you think that everybody should have to subscribe to that mentality, that's when it becomes toxic. That's when it becomes toxic.
Be a man, plain and simple.
I don't know. I think we're just getting in dangerous territory when we start talking about chivalry. At the end of the day, it's like, yo, baby, if you want to pay for this, like, there is no hierarchy here. Like, if you want
Wasn't that like a first date question though? Was that not like, hey, who should have paid for the first date?
I'm actually changing my answer. Remember the got old. Never had a work.
Oh, it's the first date. Yeah, like because I totally am fine with my partners
talk
paying
about
for anything.
chivalry. At the end of the day, it's
Pay
like,
for everything,
yo,
boy.
baby, if you want to pay for this, like, there is no hierarchy here. Like, if you want to pay for this. Maybe next time I'm like, I just got a check, so I'll pay for it.
Wasn't this the first meal though? You
Yeah,
said?
the first one.
Okay, you only get one chance to make a first impression.
There you
What
go.
does it matter if it's a girl or a guy? It's 2019, and your logic shouldn't be, like, no disrespect, like, oh, because my grandpa did it and it worked for him, then it works for me. If she's not gonna date me that second time because I didn't pay for her, I think I dodged a bullet.
Why? That's just a weird perspective. Like I said, like the person who's like who wants to be the more dominating masculine, women can be masculine, individual, they should like pay. Like if you're trying to, I don't know, it's just like a point of impression. Like you don't have to do that. I'm just saying. I just feel like that's the best way to go. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too traditional in it.
Support the Me Too movement.
How is this controversial? So like the Me Too, I support the Me Too movement. I support the Me Too movement. Yeah. So there are, and when we talk about these things, we're always so fucking hyperbolic. There are negatives to anything. I'm sure you could find the negative to the Me Too movement. I think that the most negative aspect of the Me Too movement was that it seemed to suggest that we should listen to all women at the first rather than to listen to, it's the Me Too movement originally seemed to suggest that we need to believe all women rather than to listen to all victims. The Me Too movement is like overwhelmingly positive though. And that's something that I hold to quite a bit. Yeah. But I believe in the Me Too movement.
3, 2, 1, go.
Be real. Be real.
At first, when I saw it, you know, and talking to my friends, and family, a lot of people in the South, they're like, these women should have spoke up a long time ago. And then I had to like step aside and really process it for myself and be like, you know what? She didn't feel comfortable. And she wasn't in a society, in a place where it was acceptable for her to say anything about it.
And that's a good point too. Like there is a historical aspect to it. So like we're getting better as a society. There's still issues, I think, in our interactions when it comes to like how we interact with women. Like it's a very new concept. A lot of you guys already embraced it because a lot of you guys are younger. Where like if you're in a position of power where you like have financial power over an individual and you say, hey, I'll give you money, or I'll give you this job opportunity if you'll sleep with me. That's very predatory, like predatorial. Is that what you say it? But that's a very new concept. Back in the day, even a lot of women believed it's like, oh, well, that's what you wanted to do. You want to sleep your way to the top. That's on you. And it's like we need to kind of restructure our minds around like abusive power dynamics.
So now that they have the platform and the ability,
and it's easy to say like, hey, why don't you go to the police? But then again, like there's like a common place. You know, it's very common to just be like, oh, well, you know, what back in the day, especially, hey, what were you wearing? Why were you there? You know, kind of putting a lot of the blame on women, and to the point where they didn't feel comfortable.
I'm like, that's amazing. Speak your truth.
What do you tell a child who is accused of rape by a woman, has his whole life destroyed, and then people just go,
There's always going to be people that take advantage of it, or it's not going to be perfect.
And like that guy is touching on like the aspect I said earlier, where it's like originally the Me Too movement felt like it was talking more about believing all women rather than like listening to victims. And like, yeah, because there is an offset to it. If you allow that movement to grow in like a negative way, and like toxically, and you don't keep it like a context there, like, yeah, it could be very negative. Like we have to keep in mind that like, yeah, like I've had false accusations against me. I don't think that that's something that I think it's somewhat common for men to have false accusations against them, because some women do weaponize it. I'd say most assault claims are valid, but like we need to be careful creating comfortable spaces for people, not even just women, but people in general, but mostly women. We need to keep in mind like to not allow comfortable spaces that allow people to like abuse like the claim.
Figuring it out as we go, but I think it's done more good than it's done bad.
Sure.
I think we get to acknowledge the bad though. Like I think
of course.
That's why I'm doing like this thing is like for us to say like, oh, he did that to me, and all of a sudden now we've like vindicated that guy is like vilified. Like there is no chance of like him having a say in the conversation.
Trial by mob is not good. Like this mob mentality is bad. I agree with that, but I don't think that's exclusive to the Me Too movement.
But we're using it right now to say, oh, that person is bad. Oh, fuck that person. There's no further conversations being had.
I'll F you. You're handsome. All right, enough of that.
If it's a movement to say, yes, okay, this hierarchy we've created of men and women, which is a result of the way men are expected to act, that women are expected to act. Let's have those conversations and everything changes, and I'll be over there all fucking day.
Toxic masculinity is overblown. 3, 2.
Oh, that's a really good question. Wait. That's actually a great question. Okay, is toxic masculinity overblown? Holy moly. Damn, that's something. Yeah, I think so. I think toxic masculinity is overblown. I think that we put so much emphasis specifically on toxic masculinity that we don't talk about things that would be considered toxic femininity. Because there are toxically masculine aspects. But like, yeah, no, I mean, Jesus. But it is a bit overblown, right? I don't know. Okay, so let's give like a for instance. Okay, so for instance, like from a toxic masculinity perspective, because it is real, yeah. But like, okay, men can show emotion. That's a really good thing. Like, men shouldn't have to bottle it up. I think that men not showing emotion is harmful to men. I think that it can also encourage men to like bottle things up and express themselves very in like an angry way that can be incredibly harmful to whoever they're dating, whether it's a man, a woman, or a non-binary individual, anything. But like, I think that it doesn't mean that you don't need to be strong, right? I would say that it is like removing toxic masculinity is about this is masculine and this is feminine. This is toxic masculinity, like a toxically masculine trait. So, for instance, showing your emotions or just not showing any emotion. And here's like the toxic feminine trait. Let's just say it's overly showing your emotions. And what we're taught, it seems to be that like, hey, you don't have to bottle everything up. Somehow means, hey, you can cry about everything. But like, listen, some people express themselves through crying. Some people are more feminine than others. But like, generally speaking, instead of going from toxic masculinity to here, like you can shift over. Like you can express yourself without breaking down and crying and showing weakness. I genuinely think that in a two-person relationship, one partner should be a little bit more traditionally masculine. It doesn't have to be a man or a woman. It doesn't really matter. But like we have to like, it's okay to there's certain situations where I feel like, for me personally, the situations that I feel like it's acceptable to cry are like when it comes to like family deaths, extreme like personal relationship type situations, where I've cried. You know, but like it's not like a go-to, and I feel like the reversal of toxic masculinity has gone from like, hey, men, you could be a little softer. That's how it should be, but instead it's like, hey, men, you just be soft, and it's like, no, I don't think that people in general should be soft. I think you understand what I'm saying.
I overblown. Wait, what? Overblown. What do?
Ew, masculine women.
Use a different word.
Yeah.
That's the exact right word.
Yeah, I think I just somewhat agree that it's blown out of proportion, because I think what happens with social media is a group of people coin a term, and now we're all painted by it.
Like we are.
That's true too. Like that's actually true too. That's something I definitely agree with. Okay, so it's also a thing. It's like if you have any level of traditional masculinity, or if you're like a masculine individual, you'll be like, oh, that's toxic masculinity. It's like if I personally wouldn't let my son wear a dress, right? That's toxic masculinity. Like, no, it's not. If you're an adult, or even if my kid was like 16 probably, and they're like, I want to wear a dress, fine. But like, it's not toxic masculinity to be like, hey, I want my kid to be a little more traditional. I prefer, I'm going to have masculine sons and daughters, but like to call it masculine, like toxically masculine, it's like, stop it. It's a dress. I'm not beating my kid when he cries. You know what I'm saying?
Like a I don't know, like rape culture world, you know, like women are being catcalled every day. And so like men are still, I think, seen or experienced as like a predatory presence to women. So like that's why I just don't think it's like overblown. I think it's new.
If we were good men, there wouldn't be feminists. They wouldn't be attacking us. They wouldn't be hating us. You have a lot of guys who don't want to commit to marriage. You have a lot of guys who catcall. So yes, men have become toxic. And once again, I have to be consistent with all my beliefs and all my morals. I'm very traditional.
I see what you're saying, but the way you're framing it, like this word moral is kind of
we don't know what that is anymore, though. That's
well, it's like
problem.
it sounds like you're saying like it's men's job to be like the moral compass of society.
It is.
No.
I think it's everyone's job.
It's everybody.
It's an interesting perspective. Men's purpose to be a moral compass. No. Before you know it, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily agree. That's an interesting thing. I think it's a strong person's job to be a moral compass of society. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily masculine or feminine. I think that we don't have enough femininity in our guiding of like societal values. But I don't know that I necessarily... I disagree. I would just say strong people rather than men. It's a strong person's idea. Yeah.
But men, if men want to coin themselves as the leaders, you have to hold up to the good and the bad.
That's part of the problem, though. Like that's what I think toxic masculinity, or it's putting too much pressure on yourself. I mean, it's very obvious that we're grappling with like the history and the damage of like what a world completely run by men does to us. That's why I think we're talking about that.
I think that guy kind of exemplifies the world isn't completely run by men. Like there absolutely is a power dynamic that favors men in the world. We do have men in high positions of power, but like it doesn't mean that men run the entire world. From a business perspective, yeah, men tend to run the world, but that doesn't mean that women don't have any level of say. It doesn't mean that like I'm not saying we shouldn't change. We should definitely change. We should definitely create inviting spaces for women to enter the workforce specifically, right? And then being more managerial roles. Doesn't mean that we should force them to do that. But like a fucking brain fart. To suggest that like the entirety of society is run exclusively by men would be like, yeah, that if just embracing that, like that in general suggests that like toxic masculinity has gone too far. Like you thinking that that's real is very ignorant.
Toxic masculinity.
I am comfortable showing my emotions.
I'm comfortable showing my emotions. Like, that's kind of a loaded term. I think that everybody should be comfortable showing your emotions, but make sure you show your emotions in the correct way. That, like we've talked about before, like I can show my emotion that I'm dissatisfied with something without being violently angry, or I can show my emotions of being sad without crying like a child, or I can show my emotions of being happy without like doing a backflip. Obviously I can't because I'm fat, but showing your emotions doesn't mean that you need to be like incredibly like intense or hyperbolic about the way that you show your emotions. But I'm pretty comfortable showing my emotions, yeah.
It's been like harped upon me for years that like showing my emotions were bad. And like me trying not to be gay, I'm like, no, like I don't want to show these emotions because I'm not gay. I can't be gay. Like I'm not supposed to be gay. Like the church tells me, my dad tells me, my mom tells me, everybody's telling me I'm not supposed to be gay. So like just understanding that at 25, now 26, like I'm over here like, okay, like, oh, you're insecure. Okay, that's what that feels like. Oh, you're sad. That's what that feels like. I can now be aware of those things, but to show them to other people right now is like really hard for me.
I do feel like I'm very verbally like about my emotions with my wife, but I wouldn't agree completely because I'm not like that with anyone else. I mean, I just failed a college class and I was crying about it to my wife, but no one else at school saw me cry.
That's fair. Yeah.
I specifically
Very
texted my wife to
pluggers.
make sure the kids are asleep by the time I come home because I just knew I was gonna be like, as soon as I stepped through that threshold to my house, I was just gonna let go and I didn't want them to see that. But like the next day I sat down and I had that conversation with them, like, hey, I just wanna let you guys know, you know, your dad didn't pass this class. And
Wait, your dad didn't pass a class and he cried? Wait.
they're like, oh, are you okay? And I'm
Next
like, yeah,
time
of course.
You
You know,
just
like,
cry in front of
You cried over not passing a class? That's a little silly to me. I mean, I get crying when someone dies or if you have a big fight with your partner, but you didn't pass a class, you freaking nerd. Frick you.
your kids, man. I remember like seeing my dad cry for the first time when his mom died, and I remember like imprinting that in my mind as like, wow, you know, like my dad can be upset, and that was like an important thing to witness.
It's reality, emotion.
Yeah, it's real.
I was raised by two parents that I never ever saw cry. The effect that that had on me was by the time one of them passed away very suddenly, I didn't really seem to be affected at all. So I've actually had to do a lot of therapy on that. This thing about masculinity not being able to show your emotions is very bad. It puts us backwards in society, and we need to be thinking about how to tap into our emotions in a healthy way together.
Is this the music in the...
Thank you for standing in your truth, brother.
That was like the weirdest music. Okay, so that was pretty interesting. Thank you so much, guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah, I love you all. I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.